Hey, I'm Donnie. Recently retired from Tyson Foods, where I was blessed to have a 36-year career. Along the way, I studied a lot of leadership styles. What I'd like to talk to you today about is contrasting two leadership styles that I see in the workplace. One is a self-serving model, I'll show you that, and another is the servant leadership model. Not as popular, not as prominent, but much, much more effective. My chief information officer gave me a book a few years ago called Orbiting the Giant Hairball. It was written by a guy named Gordon McKenzie at Hallmark Gift Cards. And as I read that book, I found what I think is the perfect illustration to contrast these two different leadership styles. So he drew a pyramid, and he talked about the fact that most businesses are structured with a pyramid-shaped organizational structure. So you've got one CEO at the top, and then, in an organizational structure I'm familiar with, there were a few more EVPs, and then below them there was a larger number of senior group VPs, and then below them group VPs, and then below that senior VPs, and then VPs, and then of course the VP wannabes, senior directors, managers, assistant managers, and then, bless their hearts, all the people that actually work for a living, right? And you hear about the corporate pyramid, climbing the corporate ladder. Well, here it is. Here's the corporate ladder. These are all the different rungs on the ladder. Now, here's the problem I see. Far too many people get an idea about a leadership model from the organizational structure. Listen, the organizational structure is built to make the business effective. It does not inform the leadership model, how we lead. I'll get to that in a second. But far too many people, far too many leaders in the workplace today look at their place on the corporate ladder and they start viewing their worth based on where they are, what rung they're on that ladder. So let's think about one of these leaders and how they might think about themselves compared to other people that work in their company. Let's take, for example, this SVP versus maybe this assistant manager. Now, in most companies, how do you think that SVP is going to view himself or herself compared to an assistant manager? Well, here's what's in their mind. They're going, well, I got a big title, I got a much bigger salary, I've got more responsibility, I live on the golf course, I pull a boat to the lake, versus this person, I'm obviously much more valuable to the company. And then they kind of break off that company part, and in their mind, they start thinking, I'm much more valuable. I'm much more important than this person. If I wasn't, why would they pay me all that money? Why would they give me that responsibility? Why would they give me that title? And before long, they start treating people with that mindset. Well, I'm more important than you, so this is really about what you need to do for me. Or just do what I tell you to do. I don't need you to think. I'm the smart one here. I'll do all the thinking. You just do what I tell you to do. And that creates just a toxic work environment. So let's think about this leader with that mindset and think about what drives that leader. What's making them treat people the way they do? I think it's two things. I think first it's fear and then pride. And here's why I think that. Let's think about this leader again. So if their entire self-worth is wrapped up in their job title, they're important, they're valuable because they're a SVP of whatever company, then what is the worst thing that could possibly happen to that leader? That's right, they'd get demoted, because if they get demoted, they not only lose their position on the ladder, they lose value because their value is wrapped up in where they are the ladder, right? And so there's this fear of, I can't let something happen to me because if it does, my value is diminished. And folks, that's just pure pride. But these leaders in this self-serving leadership style, it's all about them. And it's all about protecting their position. And it's all about making sure that they look good so that they can get a chance to move up the ladder, which will make them what? Yep, even more important. This type of leadership model just creates a toxic environment that most people don't want to be in. And then McKinsey contrasted this pyramid structure with a peach tree. So here's the peach tree. Here's our peaches. There's the branch structure to support them. Now think about the difference. So when I look at an organization, yeah, I can look at the organizational chart and tell that there's one CEO and 3 EVPs and 6 SVPs and 10 group VPs, et cetera, right? I mean, I can see the structure. I know how that works. But when I look at a company and I look at the structure, I don't see a leadership model. I see a leadership model when I look at a peach tree. Think of the difference. Cold, hard, rigid, unbending, ugly, all those descriptors. Growing, vibrant, delicious, all those descriptors. And so think about the contrast that McKinsey is showing us here. Who's the star of the show in the pyramid? Yep, CEO. Star's always on top of the Christmas tree, right? Who's the star of the show of the peach tree? That's right, the peaches. I mean, it's a peach tree, right? And so everything about the peach tree is there to support the peaches. Now, CEO is on the top of the pyramid model. Where's the CEO in the peach tree model? Yep, just the opposite. CEO's down here. You got a root structure and that sort of thing. The CEO's job is to provide the resources, whether capital, financial, human resources, capital equipment, et cetera, for the organization, and to support a group of people whose jobs are to support the people who fulfill the company's purpose. In our case, make great food and make a difference, right? As you look at those two models and you think about this model, you're thinking, well, the CEO's job is to lord himself over all those minions below him and get his will and push down his arrogance to everybody else so that they do it, so that these workers here get their job done. Where is the peach in the pyramid model? That's right here. It's peach juice. It's just getting crushed by all this bureaucracy and all this ego and all this pride and all this fear, and they come to work in a shackled environment where they're not free to be themselves. They're not asked to participate in how to make the company better, et cetera. So think about this environment. So the peach, it has CO2 for photosynthesis. It has water and nutrients coming up through the trunk or the leadership structure, providing it everything it needs to be successful. It's completely resourced. So let me ask you something about the company or the organization you work in. What's the chance that you're going to walk up to any person working in that company, in that organization, and say, what do you need? And their answer is going to be, nothing. I'm perfectly resourced. Slim to none, right? I mean, that's just not going to happen. But what if you could come to work every day in an environment where everybody that works there is completely resourced? They're in a safe work environment. They're well paid for the value that they create. They understand their job perfectly. They know why it fits into the larger organization. They're taken care of by their supervisor. He's responsive. He meets their needs when they have needs. She meets their needs when they have needs. They're perfectly resourced. And just imagine if that was the case, where everybody had everything they need, PC worked every day, system was fast, all that stuff worked every day. How incredibly productive could that company be? But here's the problem. Too many of us as leaders are bound by fear and pride. We're afraid to lose our place in line. And we're so wrapped up in our job title and the fact that we have people that work for us that we won't turn our attention to them and give them everything they need to be successful. Think about the contrast. These leaders are driven by fear and pride. So what are these leaders driven by? Pretty much the opposite. What's the opposite of pride? Humility. What's the opposite of fear? Some might say courage. I choose the word confidence, but pick either one. Now, let me ask you something. If you could choose, would you rather work in an environment that is led by a prideful, arrogant, fearful leader that's scared to death of losing their position in line, and they're going to do anything they have to do to keep it? Or would you rather work in an environment where your leader is humble and she's confident and she's going to do everything she can do to make you successful because she knows that's going to drive her success? Even more importantly, look at yourself in the mirror. As a leader, which model, and be very honest, which model more closely represents your leadership style most of the time? I think if we're honest, far too many of us are saying, yeah, that's me. So earlier I said that this servant leadership model was much more effective. You want to know why? Because it's biblical. This is the way Jesus said lead. Let me take you to a passage of scripture in Mark chapter 10. And there's a conversation where James and John, and their nickname was called the Sons of Thunder, so that kind of gives you an idea about these two guys' personality. They come up to Jesus and say, hey, Jesus, when you take over, we want to be your right-hand man and your left-hand man. We want to sit on either side of you when you sit down in your kingdom. And he said, you really know what you're asking? Are you really willing to drink from that cup? And of course, their answer is, well, of course. I mean, I'm the man. Absolutely. I'm your guy. I'm your go-to guy. Put me in the chair. I won't let you down, boss. And Jesus said, look, it's not my place to say who's going to sit on the right or the left. That's up to the Father. But guys, you are going to drink of the cup. Then the Bible says that the other 10 disciples were just indignant. I mean, they were hacked that these two guys came up and frankly jumped up in front of line and threw them under the bus to be the number one and the number two beside Jesus. And so Jesus takes this teaching moment and he teaches them a phenomenal lesson about leadership. And he says, you know, the Gentile rulers and leaders around you, they lord it over the people that work for them or that they lead, right? That's just the way it works. But it is not to be that way among you. For you're to serve others. And in the kingdom, the first will be last and the last will be first. He said, look, even the Son of Man didn't come to be served, but rather to serve and to give his life as a ransom for many. You be the leader, the servant leader that draws that out of that peach so that peach can be as close to perfect as they possibly can be. That's the way that Jesus taught us to lead, like servants.